Good morning, everyone. I'm Pastor Dave, and I have another show for you. Today we're going to talk about the effect, if you will, of the post-truth world. Like, where did it come from and how it's really impacting our lives. Where it came from, and this is just my opinion, is that for millennia, people of faith have always taken their sacred text to be literally true. And this is where it has really become an issue. The Catholic Church, for example, rejecting the notion that the earth was not the center of the universe. And when, Copernicus and Galileo and Kepler, and ultimately Isaac Newton, came around to show that the earth was not only not the center of the universe, but was not even the center of our galaxy, and was not even the center of our own solar system. And that our sun, which we saw every day seemingly go around us, was in truth the center of our solar system, and we, the people of Earth, were rotating around the sun. And as demeaning and as horrible and as demonic as that sounded, it became quite a source of pain for the Catholic Church, the leaders, the religious leaders, to finally accept that that was the truth. That the scientific evidence was overwhelming, and that they had to surrender to the idea that the earth was not the center of the universe. And so other things fell. When evolution came along, it challenged the creationist thinking, and evolution has become scientific fact. There is overwhelming evidence that we did not come from a God who created everything in 6 days. It doesn't mean we didn't come from a God. It just that it didn't happen in 6 days. Evolution took billions of years. And you're going to argue about carbon dating and how inaccurate it is. Well, if something is 13 billion years old, then you can say plus or minus 200 million years. Believe it or not, that's pretty accurate. So, but the creationists still exist. They insist that what God had written, especially in the Old Testament, where 3 major religions rely on that story as the truth. Obviously, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all have the same creation story. That's a lot of people, billions of people, that could potentially accept that as true. And that's where we're stuck. We're stuck with a huge chunk of our population that is rejecting the science behind evolution. For no other reason than they these believers, not all Christians, not all Jews, not all Muslims, believe that God created the universe in 6 days. They don't all believe that. The ones that do believe it so intensely, they have to believe that every single word in the Bible is literal. It's as if God quoted. It's verbatim and not to be interpreted in any way. So they have to believe, in spite of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. This insistence that evolution is the lie and creationism is the truth is why we are living in the world that we live in today. They cannot figure it out. They cannot break from the need for them to be literal. And I had to really kind of figure that out. Well, why? What's the big deal? So what? God caused the world to be evolved, and it was created over a vast amount of time, and not as it was suggested in the Bible. Why is it so important that creationists hold on to the delusion that God created everything in 6 days? What's the value of that? It's not a point of faith. This has nothing to do with your personal relationship with God. Why do you have to cling to this story, which was clearly just a story? They had a starting place. David wanted to write down all the stories of the Jewish people. I mean, this is what the whole Old Testament's about. There's really only 3 themes. There's the identification of the Jewish people. So they have all these, this person begat this person, begat this person, begat this person. And so you have this genealogy. So that's the first one. Who are the Jewish people? And that's really all they're trying to do. They're trying to collect all the oral histories, and they're trying to collect them and put them in one book. And it happened around the time of David when this occurred. So that the first theme is genealogy, who are the Jewish people. The second theme is monotheism. At the time, polytheism was the way to believe. But that was not acceptable. The way to go was to be monotheistic. And so the stories in the Bible, the Old Testament, the Torah, are stories to encourage the Jewish people to maintain a monotheistic belief system. My opinion, they weren't so much stories but threats. It's more like, they were blackmailed into it. Some of these stories are very disturbing. So that is its purpose. You write these stories, and they are stories that clearly want God, for the Jewish people, to choose God. And that's a big insight right there. It is, the Jewish people might claim that they're the chosen people. That was all PR stuff. That was all hype. That they're trying to encourage the Jewish people to choose God. So that sounded, very pleasant. Well, wow, God chose us. But in truth, the Jewish people chose God. I mean, they were kind of held in hostage here. They were, I don't know, they were blackmailed into it. At least that's what it feels like to me. That's an opinion. I'll grant you that. I mean, the stories indicate that if you step away from God, you are severely punished. And that's how God controlled his people. So, that's what we're living with. And then, of course, the third one is the prophecy, the coming of upcoming events, and ultimately the Messiah that was going to save the Jewish people. And Jesus stepped in and claimed he to be the Messiah, and then that prompted the whole writing of the New Testament. So you have all this divine sense, this feeling that, wow, something big happened, something powerful happened, and these words must mean something, and they must be taken literal. If you start to, consider them less than the Word of God, then they somehow lose their value, which is not true. But that's the fear. So for whatever reason, creation, well, I think I know the reason, and we'll get to that, but creationists need to believe that every single word is a word directly from God, and not to be misinterpreted, to be taken literally. Which, if you've ever read the Bible, is quite impossible. Because how can you literally say there was a tree of knowledge? We don't even know what that means. Was it literally a tree? And what was the fruit? What was the fruit that she ate something and then obtained knowledge of good and evil? And he says, all right, there's nothing like that ever since. I understand the Garden of Eden was the starting point, but this is where the literalists are going to have a hard time. They cannot accept certain things because they can't be taken literally. I've heard so many interpretations about what it meant or what happened when Eve ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge. And a lot of them have these sort of sexual implications, and even the literalists cannot really come up with a reason what's going on. And by the way, as long as we're talking about that event, the Bible does not say that Satan, the devil, was the one that influenced Eve to take the fruit from the tree of knowledge. It was just, if you read it literally, it was a serpent who spoke to her and told her, surely you will not die if you eat of the fruit. But this literally happened to those that believe these things. This literally happened. There's this little girl, she has the body of an adult, but is 1 day old, and was talked into eating this fruit by a serpent. Not Satan, a serpent. Cannot add any kind of interpretation to the word because it's literal. And that stubborn, desperate need for the Bible to be literally true is what's choking us in the modern day. Because that technique, that ignorance of fact, that insistence is what causes the problems we have around the world.